excited to know that you are known as a data doc. How did you get that name?
One of my clients gave it to me when I hung out my shingle, and I worked with his organization. We were working a lot together, he and I. And he raised a lot of questions, and we talked it through. And at one point, he goes, "You're like a data doctor," kind of thing. And I thought about that a little bit and tried putting it on my business card.
What advice would you give to someone who can take care of the data quality from the starting before it becomes a mess?
Go find one of those business problems. One of the first quality problems I worked on when I was at AT&T is there was some invoicing issue. AT&T bought something called Access, and Access was fouled up. The people didn't trust the invoices for Access, and we dove in and we figured out how to solve that.
What are the most common mistake you see when people start analytics projects?
There's a lot of people with different perspectives on it, and if you don't get agreement on what the problem is, then you don't get the right data. You don't get people bought into the solution, and so forth.
Hello everyone. Today we are being joined by Tom Redman, the data doc. Helps company attack data issues heads on. Everything from AI to better decisions and smooth operation depends on high quality data. His approaches aim to empower people to get the basics right. His work can be found in Harvard Business Review in his latest book, People and Data, Uniting to Transform Your Organization. Welcome, Tom, to the Executive Outlook.
Thank you very much for having me, Isha. I've been looking forward to this all week.
I'm very excited to know that you are known as a data doc. How did you get that name?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, quite honestly, one of my clients gave it to me. It was fairly early when I hung out my shingle, and I worked with his organization. We were working a lot together, he and I, and he raised a lot of questions, and we talked it through. And at one point, he goes, "You're like a data doctor," kind of thing. And I thought about that a little bit and tried putting it on my business card, and people resonated with it really, really well. So I thank that individual, that client, for suggesting it, and all I did was smart enough to try it out on my business card, and as I said, people resonated with it.
It builds trust that, hey, you are the doctor and we will get all our issues resolved. Yeah. So you have worked with many companies, be it startup, be it global brands, right? So what are the common challenges in data quality that you see everywhere?
That's a really good question, and I thought I tried to think about it a little deeper based on your question. And it seems to me the biggest problem that most of them is they are way, way too tolerant of bad data. And what I mean by that is they're perfectly content to make a mistake in one part of the organization and then expect somebody in another part of the organization to find that mistake and correct it so that they can do their work. And people just, a lot of people spend, half of their day or more in certain areas dealing with bad data just so they can do their job. Yet they're very tolerant of it, and it seems never to occur to them to win their way upstream and say, "Why do you keep sending me junk?" And over this, okay, that's the way it is. I think it's time for practically every organization, and certainly those that are interested in AI, to grow more and more intolerant of just bad stuff and the damage it's doing to their companies.
So true. And with AI, things are escalated right now because everyone wants to use AI, but they cannot because of this big issue of data quality.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really concerned. I happen to hope I really hope AI succeeds. I don't think it is yet given that it will, but it offers the potential to solve so many problems that, have are bedeviling people in both their personal and business lives. We've been through a couple of AI winters, and people are fickle. I mean, they've been pretty tolerant of mediocre AI so far, right? The hype cycle has continued, but we're seeing signs that, maybe we're entering that trough of disillusionment. And bad data is a big contributor to that. Quite simply, you cannot trust the answers. And interestingly, by the way, I think the more it matters, the less you can trust the answers. And so we've got to get this quality thing sorted pretty darn quickly with respect to AI. And there's a lot of dimensions to it, a lot of aspects. So we're kind of in a situation where we're growing short on time, and the problem is really, really hard.
So, like, can you tell me some of the real examples where fixing the data quality issue has created a big difference to the company results?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question, Isha. One of the things that I'm doing is encouraging all data people to get their success stories in the public domain. And I was trained as a statistician. I started my career at Bell Labs. And while I was never in a publish or perish mode, right? So, if you learn something new that can help others, get it in the public domain. So over the course of my career, I've put examples including AT&T and Chevron and Shell and Gulf Bank and HelloFresh in the easily accessible public domain. So Morningstar, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Era Energy, right? And by that I mean in things like Sloan Management Review and Harvard Business Review. So those are 6 or 7 companies that I've named that are in the public domain, and the business benefits that those companies have seen are described in those articles. Importantly, it's not always about saving money. Sometimes it's just about trust, or sometimes it's just about reducing risk, or sometimes it's just about understanding what the heck is really good.
That's so true. You are right. Like, it need not to be that always revenue perspective. It is also about the trust perspective. That is so important. That is so important.
Right. Isha, I think that if it sort of averages across a company, people are spending about 30% of their time dealing with data issues every day. That's a number. It sounds like a Tom Redman number, right? It's the kind of thing I like to cite. But this one isn't from me. It's from McKinsey. And so what that means is no matter what you do, your job has 2 components. One component's your job, and then the other is fixing up data so you can do that job. And basically, like, another way of saying that is you come in every day and you clean up other people's crap. Well, who wants to do that? I studied finance, I studied marketing, I studied sales, and now, I come in this job and I get to clean up crap kind of thing. And
Other person's crap. Maybe somewhere down the line you don't know the lineage of it, and you might mess up with something different. That can also happen.
it is impossibly difficult job. People get no training or support in doing it, right? As you say, I mean, it's hard to, there's a lot of errors out there, but it's hard to find them all, and plenty of them leak through. By the way, this is part of the reason I mentioned being intolerant, right? Well, people kind of come in every day, and that's what they've got to do. You see all these employee satisfaction scores. Well, they're way down. And who can blame somebody if half your day is cleaning up crap? It's unfortunate. And by the way, I mean, and there, to me, is part of the opportunity. And what got me so excited when I wrote People and Data is to, instead of cleaning up crap, make the root causes go away. And people love making the root cause go away. They love the teamwork associated with that. They love the control they feel. And I talk in terms of empowerment. People empower themselves. It is a great feeling. And I don't know of any company that per se, we're going to improve data quality to improve our employee satisfaction score. But it is a big benefit, and one that should not be discounted, right? Improve data quality to save money and build trust, and not quit dissatisfying customers, but reap the benefits of employee satisfaction. Turn them loose.
Yeah. So deep dive into this, that if a company is dealing with a lot of data, So, what advice would you give to someone who can take care of the data quality from the starting before it becomes a mess?
Right. I mean, any company that's been around for a while, I mean, the data's a mess kind of thing. Let me answer two questions. The first question is, if you're a person coming in and you have the opportunity to start your company's data quality program, what should you do first? The answer is along two lines. First of all, there are enormous business problems that have bad data at their root. Go find one of those business problems. One of the first quality problems I worked on when I was at AT&T is there was some invoicing issue. AT&T bought something called Access, and Access was fouled up. The people didn't trust the invoices for Access, and we dove in and we figured out how to solve that. And it meant that an enormous amount of effort to verify the invoices went away. Right, hundreds of people got energized by doing that. But it was a concrete business problem. Another case we went in, people did not trust the market research data. Well, why is that? Dive in and solve the market research data. A third example was, just involve an organization that they're an oil company and they drill an oil well and it came time to service the well and they couldn't find it, right? The longitude, the location of the well was messed up. And so companies have enormous, big money data quality problems. And if you're trying to start a data quality program, so find one of those, right? And rather than cleaning up the data, which you're doing now, which the company's doing now, figure out how to get in front of it, right? I often talk in terms of the creators of data and the customers of data, and the customers are bearing the cost, and get them to work with the creators and solve that particular problem. And so that is track one. Right. And everybody respects that you solve a big data problem. And I don't mean big data. I mean a big problem that the business has. The second track is everybody has opinions about whether the data is good or bad. And it is really easy, absent any hard facts, to fall back and say, well, our data is as good as everybody else's. It's not a problem. And so the second track is to get some facts. Maybe take, I don't know, let's say 50 key things going on in the company, key processes. And years ago, I developed this little method that came to be known as the Friday afternoon method. And it was just a way of looking at data as it was being used in processes. And all it did was, it just laid out the last 100 times you did something and laid out the key data for doing it. And with a red pen marking the errors, in some respects, it was just looking at the data and counting stuff up kind of thing. And this has proven remarkably fungible to get that first measurement. And so, if you sequence genes, look at some genes. If you renew software licenses, look at the data needed to renew software licenses. And if you're that person trying to organize the data quality programs across the company, get 50 or so measurements made like this. They take a couple hours each, but assemble an overall picture, right, across the company as much as you can get people to work with you, and then lay it out, right? This is the way things are working. Here's the impact this is having, right? And then, quite frankly, is this something we want to solve or not? And of course, the point is, on the one hand, solving individual problems, and then on the other hand, trying to gain leverage, right? To get more senior people interested in solving this in a broader.
Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. So what are the most common mistake you see when people start analytics projects they make, and because of which we cannot trust data?
So look, the first step in any program says define the problem you're working on. and get agreement on what that problem is. Look, I mean, most important problems, there's a lot of people with different perspectives on it. And if you don't get agreement on what the problem is, then you don't get the right data, you don't get people bought into the solution, and so forth. And it's really easy if you're an analyst to like skip that step. Oh, I want to go analyze the data. Oh, I want to find some results. And you can't blame people that way. But analysts and their managers certainly should be saying, whoa, let's get an agreement on the problem. And I mean, let me just give an example of this. Trying to decide the terms and conditions, for a loan kind of thing. Everybody, all banks and financial institutions worry about that. Well, what's the problem? Is the problem to take cost out of the current process for deciding whether you're going to grant the loan or not? Is the cost to have fewer non-performing loans, to get loans that you didn't get before that will perform? Is the problem to eliminate bias? And you just think about that. If the problem is to get loans that you didn't get before that are going to perform, well, you don't have any data on that, right? You don't have any data on that. And so, if you don't have agreement, then people are going to sort of go to, well, what can we solve with the data we have, which may or may not correspond to the business opportunity. And so I think there's a famous Einstein quote that goes something like, if I had an hour to save the world, to solve some problem to save the world, I'd spend 59 minutes making sure I understand the problem and a minute, working out the solution. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. It is hard to get people in agreement on what the problem is. And it's unfamiliar for the analysts. They're not used to doing that. They want to wrangle the data, not others in the company. But I think it's essential. And I see this mistake all the time.
Like you have been working in data quality from such a long time. So how do you see this evolving over the years?
Of data is any better or worse than it's been. The biggest change is that data quality matters more. The second biggest change is that we got some really tough new issues in AI, which we did not worry too much about unstructured data before AI came along. I mean, is one example. So since I've started working on it, the collective we, and you mentioned you talked to Danette McGilvery and myself and Richard Wang and Larry English, a bunch of us. I mean, we sort of figured out what works, right? The first thing that works is you've got to get out of this mode of trying to find and fix errors, and we've got to prevent them, right? And the organizational structure that you need to do that is this notion of a customer and a creator. And the customer, becoming intolerant and deciding, okay, we're going to work with this creator. We're going to work together to find and eliminate root causes. We figured out the mechanics of that for lots and lots of simple problems. And sometimes I say, well, if there's 100 data quality issues in a company, 80 of them are pretty easy to solve with the stuff that I just described. 17 of them are increasingly difficult, and 3 are impossible, right? So, avoid those. But that's where we've gotten. What we haven't gotten to is that this is common. This is just the way we do our work. And it's easy to say senior leadership has stayed on the sidelines. I mean, it's observably true that they have, and maybe we haven't told a good enough story to get them off the sidelines. I also think I know that your podcast called The Executive Outlook, like the thing that I've had success with doing is not trying so much to explain data quality to executives, but showing them how they can help, right? And this was a little bit of a breakthrough for me, was I realized that so many executives, they actually want to help, but they don't know what to do. And so, if our person trying to start this program can say, hey, I need help with the following thing, can you do this? One of the things that I had urged clients to do is build a network of embedded data managers, and senior executives can help do that. right? Don't ask them to understand the technology. They can't do that, nor should you ask them to do that. And then when I say they can't, I mean the technology changes every day. So nobody can keep up with it, kind of thing. And so make it easier. We figured out some examples how we make it easier for leaders to jump in. But we haven't cracked the nut where, like AI is cool now. We haven't cracked the data quality is cool now. And so I don't know. Look, that's what I hope to do in the last part of my career. Sorry, I interrupted you.
And even this was the theme of CDO IQ also, that we need to make it understand that data quality is important. So I think these symposiums are going in that direction to make it that data quality matters. Data quality, to have a good quality of data is cool, right? So right now I can see that as an agenda of the symposium this time. That was the thing, right? With this, you mentioned about the observability, and then governance is there, which data governance is becoming a key right now. So there are a lot of tools in the market. Collabora, Atlan, many tools. So, do you think that these tools are helpful somewhere to solve the challenge that we are having right now in the perspective of having a good quality of data?
I like to think of data quality as involving two steps. The first step is getting the management right. Right, getting the this notion of customers and creators, getting this idea that we're going to proactively attack data quality. We're going to find and eliminate root causes of error. And I find that if you do that, then there are certain technologies that can help. The unfortunate reality, though, is most data quality tools aim to help find errors faster. And now so somebody's spending a third of their day, finding and fixing errors, and you get a tool in there, so maybe you can reduce that. Okay, and it seems like a gain. But the root cause of the problem doesn't go away. And people have more and more data to deal with every day. And so you have this situation that until you attack the root cause of the problem, right, then you're sort of just having a Band-Aid solution. The vast majority, now, by the way, I'm not saying that there's not a niche role for those things, right? So far, tools providers advertise that they solve the problem, and it simply is not true. From my perspective, they are misleading their potential buyers as to what they can do.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your practical insights and your tips on fixing the problem, the root cause, and building strong data practices are valuable for every business. It's been great having you on the Executive Outlook.
Yeah, thank you very much for thinking of me, and I enjoyed our conversation, and let's do it again sometime.